Okay. Our topic for this morning is EIA. Okay. Uh, so, okay. So we have environmental impact assessment and the regulatory environment. You must have seen already, must have learned already from the videos that I sent you about the environmental impact assessment, both as could you please mute your microphone? Everyone, please mute your microphone unless you want to speak. Okay. So here, the first thing that we need to do is to define what is an EIA. Okay. And this is what you're going to find in the revised procedural manual on environmental impact statement issued by the DNR. Now, EIA or environmental assessment essentially refers to the process of systematic analysis, evaluation, and also the management of potential environmental and social effects, whether it's short-term or long-term, or pertaining to proposed actions or projects. You may be seeing a lot about projects being referred to by EIA or EIS. Okay, but we have a more expanded concept now. It's no longer limited to projects, but also to programs, especially national and international programs. Okay, that's why I posted also in Blackboard it's about something about strategic environmental impact procedures that was part of an international convention among states. Okay, so in other words, that convention deals with a programmatic concern, but nonetheless, the core is still environmental impact assessment. So there's a big difference between project and program. That's what I mean. Okay, so be able to understand the distinction. Now, essentially, an EIA is an administrative tool integrating environmental considerations insofar as development initiatives are concerned. What is the purpose? To ensure that the proposed projects or programs will have minimal environmental impacts, and it should be environmentally sound. Okay, when the procedure, the system is properly implemented as a tool, it serves as a basis to improve the design of the project and also the implementation. Why? Because you have measures that prevent, supposedly, that mitigate and also compensates for whatever negative or adverse environmental impacts a project or program may have. Okay. Now you will see in this definition on the slide, I highlighted predicting, evaluating, and also the impacts of a project. So, prediction, this is not the kind of crystal ball that Madam Auring uses. This is a scientific prediction, okay, based on science. So science could project possible outcomes. Lots and lots of studies are being conducted for the environment, okay? The effect of a project on wildlife, the effect on particular species, effect of that project, considering the use of certain materials, chemicals, for example. There's a determination with regards to the impact on water, on air, everything. So science could determine that or make some approximation of what could be the possible consequences or effects, whether it's negative or positive. Okay, and of course, the purpose, according to this slide, is that there should be a prevention of negative impacts to the environment. Or if it could not be prevented, then at least there should be a mitigation, a reduction of the impacts if there will be no measures that will be put in place. And these measures must be enhanced every now and then. Okay, we don't get stuck on the measures that may be proposed at the beginning of a project. There has to be an inclusion in the management plan of the project, improvements as the project goes along. Okay, so constantly we build on the foundations of what you may have presented at the beginning of your presentation of a management plan. All right. Now, so here, likely impacts of a project is being determined. In the revised manual approved procedure of the DNR, it is the EIA is a process that involves predicting and evaluating the likely impacts of a project. So what is meant by this is that it may not be 100% prediction, but at least there's a semblance of knowing the outcome of the consequences of a particular activity, including cumulative impacts. What we mean by cumulative impacts is the when you consider everything, all the elements. Okay, so cumulative impacts on the environment during construction or operation of a particular project, uh, operation and abandonment also. It also includes designing appropriate preventive, mitigating, etc., as you could see from the slide. Okay. Now, why is this being done? We understood in our previous discussion in natural resources that natural resources are finite, right? In other words, we need to conserve them. And EIA is part of the conservation measures. Okay. By protecting these resources from adverse or negative impacts of activities, being able to know, being forewarned by the possible impacts, we take steps to protect them so that we could conserve the resources. In other words, the increasing and growing economic activities that have failed in the past to adequately account for the detrimental impacts of development activities to the environment has led us to the advent of the environmental impact assessment. Okay. I hope you could see the slide. Um, so EIA involves evaluating, predicting the likely impacts of projects on the environment. So the slide here tells us about the evolution of the EIA. Okay, in relation to what I said before, that in the past, because of the fast-growing economic activities, and these economic activities had been largely irresponsible. Okay, that we have failed to understand the consequences of those activities for the benefit of the future generations. Sustainability. Now, because of the realization that these burgeoning economic activities in the past had become unsustainable. It had made our environment unsustainable. Extraction of resources had become unsustainable. So the development managers realized that for them to keep on profiting, for communities to keep on benefiting, and for governments to be able to keep on servicing quite endlessly the people, the clients, customers, they coined this term sustainable development. Sustainable development became a goal. Now, one of the tools to have that sustainable development is EIA. Okay, so EIA has become a management tool as well as a customer tool. Okay, it works both ways. Now, the concept was based on the environmental impact assessment study framework that was first introduced in the United States way back in 1969. Okay, so here you will see the evolution of EIA. Now, later on, in 1992, countries realized that they need to act because they have observed that the world has become a lot less comfortable for us, environmentally speaking. So they had this Rio Declaration of 1992, Earth Summit. I clearly remember this one when I was still in the College of Law. In 1992, I was a second year law student, and that was the time that Michael Jackson released one album about the Earth. Okay, probably you might have heard the song "There's a Place in Your Heart," something like that. I think that was part of the of the album of Michael Jackson. Okay, so he released that album. So I realized that there was this international convention going on. So the Rio Declaration, because the conference was held in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, the states had agreed on Principle 17. There is this Principle 17. Okay, so what does the Principle 17 provide? Uh, Principle 17 declared that EIA should be a national instrument for sustainable development. Okay, and shall be undertaken for proposed activities that are likely to have a significant adverse impact on the environment and are subject to a decision of competent national authority. So since then, after 1992, after Rio Declaration, EIA process has become an essential component for any proposed project for every country that has participated in the in the Earth Summit. Okay, we're being warned by Zoom. We have 10 minutes more and then we will return to this session. Now, Philippines was one of those which participated. And because under the Constitution, as we have discussed before in natural resources, international conventions or treaties, especially those signed by the Philippines, becomes part of the law of the land. Okay, under Article 2 on state policies, the incorporation theory. So internationally, EIA are required under certain international conventions. As again, I'm going to restate Principle 17 of the Rio Declaration. According to Principle 17, environmental impact assessment as a national instrument note the mandatory words, shall be undertaken for proposed activities that are likely to have a significant adverse impact on the environment and are subject to a decision of a competent national authority. Okay? So, the language of Principle 17, by the way, is quite general. So it did not provide for the specifics. It merely stated a principle. It does not provide the detail as to the minimum requirements that member states or signatory states need to satisfy or comply with. In other words, the details relating to the common approaches are nonetheless reflected in international cases which have arisen after Rio Declaration was adopted. Okay, take for example, and we will study this partly in public international law next semester. New Zealand's application to the International Court of Justice concerning the resumption by France years ago of its underground nuclear testing. Okay. Also, the case concerning Gabsikovo Nagimaros project. Okay, we will discuss that in public international later on. I'm just trying to tell you that there are international cases brought before international courts involving environmental impact assessment, implementing Rio Declaration Principle 17. Also, the dispute between Ireland and UK concerning a production plant of a chemical. Okay, and the more recent one is, of course, the West Philippine Sea arbitration case between the Philippines and China. We're going to discuss further on that. In the Philippines, our environmental protection is recognized in the 1987 Constitution. For the procedure. Okay? Now, under the Constitution, in Article 2, the state shall protect and advance the right of the people to a balanced and healthful ecology in accord with the rhythm and harmony of nature. So go back to that state policy. By the way, we're about to be cut off by Zoom. So let's return in a short while. Okay, I'm going to end this session for now. Let's go back in 5 minutes time. Okay, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Yes, po,
Yes,
attorney.
attorney.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I thought you were asleep. So see you in 5 minutes.
Yes, sir.